In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most beneficent. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Kashiful Khair and I am from Chemistry Department and my ID is 018. Today I am here to present the topic of industrial chemistry, which is explosive chemistry. So let's start with the theory of explosive. In general, an explosive has four basic characteristics. Number one, it is a chemical compound or mixture which is ignited by heat, shock, impact, friction, or a combination of these conditions. Second one is upon ignition, it decomposes rapidly into a detonation. Number three is there is a rapid release of heat and large quantities of high pressure gas that expand rapidly with sufficient force to overcome confining forces. And the fourth one is the energy which is released by the detonation of explosive produces four basic effects. Number one is rock fragmentation, number two, rock displacement, number three, ground vibration, and the fourth one is air blast. So, what is theory of explosive? A general theory of explosive is that the detonation of the explosive charge causes a high velocity shock wave and a tremendous release of gas. The shock wave cracks and crushes the rock near the explosive and creates thousands of cracks in the rock. These cracks are then filled with the expanding gases, and these gases then continue to fill and expand the cracks until the gas pressure is too weak to expand the cracks any further. Next are the ingredients that are used in the manufacturing of explosive, and the ingredients include explosive base, combustibles, oxygen carriers, antacids, absorbents, antifreeze, cap sensitivity, air gap sensitivity, and the last but not the least is the strength. We will study one by one. The number one is explosive base. An explosive base is a solid or a liquid which, upon application or heat or shock, breaks very rapidly into gaseous products with an accompanying release of heat energy. The example of explosive base is nitroglycerin. The next are combustibles. A combustible combines with excess oxygen in an explosive to achieve oxygen balance, to prevent the formation of nitrous oxide, and to lower the heat of explosion. The thirds are the oxygen carrier. Oxygen carriers assures complete oxidation of the carbon in the explosive mixture, which inhibit the formation of carbon monoxide. The oxygen carriers assist in preventing a lowering of the exploding temperature. A lower heat of explosion means a lower energy output and thereby less efficient blasting, and a higher heat of explosion means a higher energy output and thereby a higher efficient blasting. Next are antacids. Antacids are added to an explosive compound to increase its long term storage life and to reduce the acidic value of the explosive base, particularly in nitroglycerin. Next are absorbents. Absorbents are used in dynamite to hold the explosive base from exudation, seepage, and settlement to the bottom of the cartridge or container. Sawdust, rice hulls, nutshells, and wood meals are the absorbents that we mostly used. Next are antifreeze. Antifreeze is used to lower the freezing point of the explosive air gap. Next are the air gap sensitivity. Air gap sensitivity is a measure of an explosive's cartridge to cartridge sensitivity to detonation. Under test condition expressed as a distance through air at which the primed half donor will reliably detonate and unprimed half cartridge receptor is maintained. Next is cap sensitivity. Cap sensitivity is a measure of the minimum energy, pressure, or power required for initiation of a detonation. The next is strength. True strength ratings are used for commercial dynamites. Number one is weight strength, and the number two is cartridge or bulk strength. Weight strength compares products on an equal weight basis, while bulk strength compares products on an equal volume basis. Both are expressed in percent using straight nitroglycerin dynamite as a standard. For example, complicating this picture, it is the variety of ingredient mixture among manufacturers. So, for example, if we have a 40% of gelatin dynamite and a 40% ammonia dynamite, they will do differently. But A 40% ammonia dynamite from two different manufacturers will give someone different result. So there's a blaster who had always used one manufacturer product could change suppliers and suddenly start complaining about bad powder. To further confuse the issue, some manufacturers continue to use the term weight strength and bulk strength as a comparative numerical rating against NFOs at 100 degrees Celsius temperature. Next, we will study the factors that are used to judge the explosive ability. A number of factors are currently used to judge on explosive ability to do the work desired, and today's blaster must consider at least the following two. Number one is detonation pressure, and the number two is the pressure magnitude or gas pressure. We will discuss one by one. The number one is detonation pressure. Detonation pressure is a measure of the product's shock wave energy influenced by the product's density and detonation velocity. The second one is pressure magnitude or gas pressure. It is a measure of the potential expanding gas energy which is influenced by the product's density and heat and velocity of detonation. Through oversimplified, one way to think of strength is to compare an explosive to a mechanical means by breaking and removing rock. We can break rock with a sledgehammer, and the detonation pressure is over explosive hammer. As density increases, the weight of the hammer increases and velocity increases. We swing the hammer faster and harder. We can move rock with a bulldozer, and pressure is over explosive dozer. As density increases, the dozer gas bigger. As velocity increases, the donor runs faster, and sometimes so fast that it outruns the rock it is trying to move. These two basically are the example of pressure magnitude or gas pressures. So, with the advent of new explosive, particularly the NFOs and the slurries, dynamite method of judging strength failed to give relevant data, and it became necessary to account not only for a product's relative stored energy, but also its rate of energy release, its gas volume potential, and its heat of detonation. Now we will study the blasting mechanics or how blasting occurs. Upon detonation, explosive affects rock by various interrelated means. While the following discussion simplifies a complex and largely theoretical subject, it should provide a basic grasp of blast mechanics. The steps that are involved in the blasting mechanics includes detonation shock wave reflection, gas pressure, and rock movement. We will study one by one. The first step is detonation shock wave. Upon initiation, the detonation zone proceeds down the column of explosive at the product's detonation velocity. At the front of this detonation zone, an energy pulse or shock wave is generated and transmitted to the adjacent rock. Any airspace between the explosive and the rock absorbs wave energy and reduces its effects on the rock. The shock wave travel outward as a compression when in all directions from the borehole, moving at near detonation velocity. The rock immediately surrounding the borehole is crushed to some extent dependent on how much of the force of the wave exceed the compression strength of the rock. The force of the wave overcomes the elastic limits of the rock, causing it to bend outward and crack. These are radial cracks in that they radiate out from the borehole and they are generated at speed related to the sonic velocity of the rock itself, which is plus minus 8000 fps in hard rock, and in case of soft rock it is plus minus 1500 fps. So if the rock mass is too large to permit bending, such a bending the like that of borehole, no radial fracture occurs. The wave energy is simply absorbed by the rock. The second step is the reflection of the shock wave. At this point, the result of the blast will only be very large wedge shaped blocks that are still interlocked. However, when the shock wave reaches a free phase, the outward bending compressive force release and the wave is reflected back into the rock as a tension of the wave. The speed of this shock wave have been slow somewhat and its energy lowered. But if the distance from the borehole to the free phase is not too great, it still carries enough force to overcome the tensile strength of the rock. Then the rock like concrete, if we have concrete rock, then it has far greater strength in comparison than in tension instance, granite with a compression strength of 30,000 psi has a tensile strength of only 1200 psi. The reflected tension wave causes lateral cracking in the rock between the radial cracks, creating fragmentation. And obviously, greater the distance between the borehole and the free face, the more the wave energy is used along the way, and larger those fragments will be produced. And so, if there is no free face, such as behind the borehole, there will be no wave reflection and no lateral cracking will be produced. And a point to remember is that any break in rock continuity will act as a free face. So a crack or a weather seams is as good as the query phase is in a record. The third step is the gas pressure and rock movement. Upon detonation, along with the shock wave, the solid explosive is instantly converted to superheated gas that is trying to occupy a space of 10,000 to 20,000 times its original solid volume and exerting a pressure that can exceed 1.5 million psi. So, without this gas pressure, the fractured rock would not move and would remain interlocked. Then the fractured rock mass has certain inertia, which the gas pressure must initially overcome to start rock movement. Thus, there is a hesitation between detonation and the start of rock movement lasting roughly 1 million seconds per foot of distance between the borehole of the free face. So, once inertia is overcome, the rock move outward away from the borehole at around 1 foot each 10 milliseconds or between 40 and 70 mph, although smaller fragments can move faster and be shot out as a fly rock. As with the detonation, shock wave, a nice even result in rock movement require rock continuity. Cracks and weather seams will allow gas venting and result in uneven and sometimes surprising directions and distance of the rock throw that is as seen here in this picture. This is the mechanics of blasting, how blast occur and how rock is converted into small fragments and how the rock moved. Next, we will study the detonation velocity. Basically, detonation velocity is an important property to consider when rating an explosive. It may be expressed as a confined or unconfined value and is normally given in feet per seconds. So, the confined detonation velocity measures the speed at which the detonation wave travels through a column of explosive within a borehole or other confined spaces. But if we're going to talk about unconfined velocity, then the unconfined velocity will indicate the rate when the explosive is detonated in the open area. So, because explosive generally are used under some degree of confinement, the confined values is more significant. So most manufacturer, however, measure detonation velocity in an unconfined column of explosive, uh, 1 or 1 by 4 inches in diameter, although some measurements are made within the confinement of an iron pipe or using a different diameter. So the confined detonation velocity of commercial explosive varies from 5,000 to 25,000 fps. Fps means feet per seconds. So, for blasting in rock hard, a high velocity explosive is preferable. But in the case of softer or highly jointed rock, a low velocity explosive, for example, ANFO with a having action maybe give satisfactory result at a lower cost. So some explosives and particularly blasting agents are more sensitive to diameter changes than Anigal's other. Now we will discuss the properties of explosive. So, by knowing what properties are critical to performance, meaningful prediction can be made in blast designs, and these properties are detonation velocity, density, detonation pressure, water resistance, and fume class. So, for a given explosive, these properties vary with the manufacturer. We will discuss these properties one by one, and the first is density. The density is also termed as a specific gravity, and it is a ratio of the density of the explosive to the density of water under standard condition. And the specific gravity of commercial explosive ranges from zero point 0.6 to 1.7 g per cc. For free running explosive, the density is often specified as a pounds of explosive per foot of charge length in a given size borehole, but it is a free running explosive density. So, with few exceptions, denser explosives give higher detonation velocities and pressure. So, density is an important consideration when choosing an explosive. For difficult blasting conditions or where fine fragmentation is required, a dense explosive is usually necessary. But in case of easily fragmented rock, where fine fragmentation is not needed, a low density explosive will often sufficient. So, low density explosives are particularly useful in the production of riprap or other porous products, but the density of an explosive is also important when working under wet conditions. So, an explosive with a specific gravity of less than 1.0 will not sink in the water. This is a table that is showing you the densities of a high density explosive known as ammonium dynamite, and we are showing rather exceptional like weight, strength, kinetic strength, other velocities. The density will remain the same, and for ammonium dynamite it is 1.3 in any case. And we will study the other properties like water resistant, fume resistant that are showing in this table one by one. So, the second one is detonation and borehole pressure. Detonation pressure is a function of the detonation velocity and density of an explosive. The nomograph, this is the basically the nomograph that I showed you earlier. The nomograph can be used to approximate the detonation pressure of an explosive when the detonation velocity and specific gravity are known. As can be seen, the detonation pressure is more dependent on detonation velocity than specific gravity. A high detonation pressure is necessary when blasting hard, dense rock. In case of soft rock, a lower pressure is sufficient. Detonation pressure of explosive ranges from 10 to over 140 kilobars, and 1 kilobar is equals to 14,504 psi. The next property is water resistance. An explosive water resistance is a measure of its ability to withstand exposure to water without deteriorating or losing sensitivity. Sensitivity is the ease with which an explosive detonates. So, water resistance is also a very important property. In dry work, water resistance is one of no consequence if water is standing in the borehole and the time between loading and firing is fairly short. An explosive with a water resistance rate of good is sufficient. So, if the exposure is prolonged or if the water is protruding through the borehole, very good to excellent water resistance is required. In general, gelatins and emulsions offer the best water resistance. Higher density explosive have fair a toxo excellent water resistance, whereas low density explosive and blasting agents have little or none. For example, brown nitrogen oxide fumes from a blast often means the explosive has deteriorated from exposure to water. The next property is fume class. Ideally, detonation of a commercial explosive produces water vapors, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen. In addition, undesirable poisonous gases such as carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides are usually formed also, and these gases are known as fumes. And the fume clause of an explosive indicates that the nature and quantity of the undesirable gases formed during detonations. So, better rating are given to explosive producing smaller amounts of fumes. For open work, fumes are not usually an important factor. In confined spaces, however, the fumes rating of an explosive is important. So, in any case, the blaster should ensure that everyone stay away from fumes generated in a shot. Like carbon monoxide gradually destroys the brain and central nervous system, and nitrogen oxide immediately form nitric acid in the lungs. So fume classes can be from poor to good and or rated class A or B by the Bureau of Mines and class 1 2. So we should avoid uh, a direct exposure to fume class. The next property is the shelf life. Shelf lives of various products describes are listed in their respective tables that I will show you. For most explosive products, shelf life of 1 year is recommended, although a satisfactory performance can be expected from most products too. 2, 3, and even 4 years later, shelf life also have been noticed. So, consult the appropriate manufacturer to determine shelf life rating beyond 1 year. For example, NPS 65 mandate a maximum shelf storage of 2 years. Now we will discuss the permissible or permitted explosive. A permissible explosive is one which has been approved by the US Bureau of Mines or the British Ministry of Fuel and Power for the use in gas or dust filled mines. When detonated or exploded, all explosive produces flame that varies in volume, duration, and of course in temperature. Black powder produces the longest lasting flame, while dynamites typically produce a shorter lasting but more intense flame. Permissible explosives are specially designed to produce a flame of low volume, short duration, and low temperature. So, this is accomplished by adding certain salts to the explosive formula in order to cool or quench the flame to prevent the ignition of gas or dust within the confined space of mine. Permission explosives are also generally modified types of emulsions, water gels, or ammonia dynamite, all in cartridge or club forms. Now we will study the classification of explosive. Explosive are classified into three forms like low explosive, high explosive, and the third ones are two component explosive. We will study one by one. The first are low explosives. Low explosives deflagrate rather than detonate. Their reaction velocities are 2000 or less than 3000 feet per second. Black powder is a good example. These materials normally have little water resistance and they are highly flammable, sensitive to a strength blasting cap, and have a having action during blasting. Low explosive generally do not fragment rock as well as high explosive. The best example of low explosive which we can see in daily life is rocket propellants or chemical propellants. This is a table that is showing you the properties of straight nitroglycerine dynamite. We can see there the weight strength is 60, the coordinate strength or uh, tensile strength is also in 60%. Then the density will be 1.3. Confined velocity will be changed. Like if the weight strength in percent is 60, then the confined velocity will be 19,000. Water resistance will be good. Flume class will be poor, and cottage count will be 106. Moreover, if we gradually decreases the weight strength to 60 to 30, we will see the density will be increases to 1.4 and confined velocity will be decreased to 11,500. Water resistance will be poor, flume class will be poor, and the cartridge count will be again decreased to 1.106 to 100. This is the nomograph of finding detonation pressure. In the graph, if you see these large scale lines, then it will show you the detonation velocity in 10 raised to power 6 fps. The middle lines will show you the detonation pressure, and the small lines on the right side will show you the specific gravity in 1.6, 1.0, or in zero form. Next are the high explosive. A high explosive is any chemical mixture that detonates with a reaction velocity over 5000 feet per second. The high explosive are straight dynamite, ammonia dynamite. We will study them one by one. Straight dynamites are nitroglycerine in an absorbent with velocities between 10,000 and 20,000 feet per second. This dynamite is the most sensitive of all commercial explosives. The weight strength is the actual percentage of nitroglycerine in the cartridge. This explosive has poor fumes, good water resistance, and poor coherent tension. The second one is ammonia dynamite. This is similar to straight dynamite except that ammonium and or sodium nitrate and various carbonaceous fuels are substituted for a portion of the nitroglycerine. There are three classes of ammonium dynamite: high density, low density, and permissible type. High density in this type of these products have a detonation velocity of 8,000 to 13,000 feet per second. They have good water resistance and fair to good fumes. Low density have detonation velocity between 7,000 and 11,000 feet per second, fair to good fumes and fair to poor water resistance they contain. And the permeable type high density ammonium dynamite are similar to low density ammonium dynamite, except that they contain cooling salts such as sodium chloride. Permissible must be approved by the US Bureau of Mines under specified condition of uses. So this material usually has good fumes and fair to poor water resistance. The thirds are gelatin dynamite. Gelatin dynamite contains nitroglycerine gelled with nitrocellulose and various absorbent filter materials. Form a soapy or rubber-like mixture which is water resistant. They also have two types, straight gelatin and ammonium or special gelatin. Straight gelatin has a detonation velocity of 13,000 to 23,000 feet per second. Varieties within strength rating above to 60% have poor fume characteristics. Water resistance is excellent and material is very cohesive. The second one is ammonia or special gelatins. They are similar in composition in straight gelatin, except that some of the nitroglycerine is replaced with ammonia and sodium nitrates, and carbonaceous fuels has a detonation velocity between 10,000 and 23,000 feet per second, and their water resistance is also good. The third type of explosive are two component explosive. These are packaged, these are in the form of packaging, and they can be shipped by any means because each separate component is non-explosive. Mixing, however, produces a class A explosive that must be handled and stored as such. And we can see that two component explosives can be shipped like in these type of rods and packaging. Now we will study what are blasting agents. A blasting agent is any material or mixture consisting of a fuel and oxidizer that is intended for blasting and that is not otherwise classified as an explosive. A blasting agent consists primarily of inorganic nitrates like ammonium and sodium nitrates and carbonaceous fuels. The addition of an explosive ingredient such as TNT in sufficient quantity changes the classification, often mixture from a blasting agent to an explosive. So, blasting agents are of great significance. So, when unconfined blasting agents can be detonated by mean of a blasting cap, unless an explosive ingredient or sanitizer is added. Now, the classification of blasting agents. Blasting agents are classified as dry blasting agents, emulsions, water gels, or slurry blasting agents. Now we will study the selection of explosive, how we should select any kind of explosive. There have been many systems which are developed to rate the strength or power of an explosive. Although these systems work, it is still not clear as to whether or not the information is useful to the field blaster. There are many reasons for choosing an explosive. This reason ranges from the specifications of the product, the price, availability, and the reliability. Whatever the reason of selection, the blaster should consider following properties. The first property is velocity. If fragmentation is desired, the best results are obtained when the detonation velocity is at or near the sonic velocity of the rock. If mass movement is more important, like detonation velocity should be notably below the rock's sonic velocity. The next is sensitivity. When using charges in small diameter borehole, the blaster needs sensitive products such as cap sensitive emulsions or water gels. The smaller the hole, the more sensitive the products need to be. ANFO functions well in large diameter holes like 4 inches and above, but has trouble sustaining detonation in small holes. Third property is gas or pressure release. This is the amount of gas and pressure released when the explosive or blasting agent detonates. So, generally, the more gas released, the more heave or displacement that is possible. Next property is water resistant. In conditions where the holes are producing water or groundwater is a problem, packaged and for water gels or emulsions functions best. There are also plastic borehole lines that can be used for bulk loading operations and for water resistance. These two component explosive are used because they are in the form of packaging, and groundwater does not affect them. The last property is the fume quality. When working in a poorly ventilated operation, such as in a tunnel, a mine, or deep trench, a selector product with a good class fume rating occurs. So even when working in the open, allow all evidence of smoke and dust to clear before re-entering the blast area. And remember that the toxic gases produced are colorless, odorless, and potentially lethal. So when selecting explosive, there are four basic categories. One is dynamite, including granular dynamite, straight dynamite, high density extra dynamite, and low density extra dynamite. Gelatin dynamite, which are straight gelatin dynamite, ammonium gelatin dynamite, and semi gelatin dynamite. Use is prohibited by policy unless a case specific waiver is obtained from the reasonable blasting officer. Next category is water gels, emulsions, and slurries, and they consisting of cartridge or and bulk products. Third is dry blasting agents, consisting of poured or bulk ANFO, aluminized ANFO, densified ANFOs, and packed waterproof ANFOs. And the fourth and the last are binary explosive, and they are consisting of two component products that are mixed in the field to form an explosive.